workshops are over, as well as all the templates that we've talked about previously. So welcome. This is the last in our Marketing Foundation series. I'm really excited to have a guest speaker here today. My colleague, Bryant Jones, he and I have worked together for many, many years on all things digital marketing, and he is absolutely an expert at customer psychology and sales, online funnels, advertising, copywriting, and website conversion optimization. So I really wanted to bring him in for this session to lend his expertise. So with that, Bryant, I will give it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. All right. I will go in to share the presentation. And you should be looking at my screen now. So copy and conversion optimization. There is my info, and we'll get right into it. So the first rule of copy, and this is in print or on web or anywhere, the first rule of copy is don't be boring. People don't have time to spend a lot of mental energy trying to figure out what you're saying. People need action words and so on. And one of the copywriters that I learned from, he said, if you can remember anything about writing copy, just remember, don't be boring, because the minute you're boring, you lose somebody. And there's lots of different angles to writing copy: the what's in it for me angle, the problem, agitate, solve angle, and so on. But if you can remember, don't be boring, that will get you a long ways there. The other thing is using psychological triggers, and we'll talk a little bit about 6 principles of persuasion that was outlined in the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. And as we're going along here, let me pull up and make sure I've got my chat open so I can see. Okay. If y'all have questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll answer them either at the very end or as we go along. See how things work out. So the 6 principles of persuasion are basically Cialdini, who's a professor of psychology, studied what causes people to say yes, or what causes people to be persuaded. And he found out that there were 6 consistent principles in people being able to be persuaded. And I highly recommend that if you want to learn about copy and or persuasion or sales, that you read any of the books and articles by Cialdini. One of them is Influence. I think it's Science and Practice. And the other one is Persuasion, which has a lot to do with the psychology of how an offer is presented. Both of them are really fascinating from a psychological point of view, and they're super useful from a sales or marketing or copywriting point of view. So just really quick, reciprocity is you do stuff for people that do stuff for you. You don't like owing people a debt. So if somebody does something nice for you, you tend to do something nice back. And there's a lot of reciprocity used in web copy and in sales that you don't even know of until after you really study reciprocity. And then you'll see, somebody hands you a flower and then they ask you for $1, and that's reciprocity. Scarcity. Anytime someone thinks that a supply of something is limited, whether it actually is or whether they just believe it is. Look at the toilet paper scare right now. Anytime you think something's limited, the demand or the desire for that thing goes up. So scarcity is always a persuasion tool that you can use inside of copy. If you have limited seats available, if you have limited quantities available, if a price is going to be going up or something like that, you have time scarcity. All of those things are important persuasion principles that you'd want to put inside of web copy. Authority, we all know that people tend to obey authority figures, or at least listen to authority figures. And there's different ways to create authority. Just like Angela created authority by creating that slide in the beginning of this presentation and by introducing me. So that's a way to also persuade. Consistency, most people will stick with what their previous actions were. And if you can ask for a little action, then you can get them to be consistent with additional action. So where we use this in web copy is having a two-part form where you just ask for a name and email address, and then after they fill that out, the next part of the form is their full information, or even having a button that you click on that then pops up the name and email address. All those are little, it's called I can't think of the principle. Anyway, consistency has a couple different components to it, but that is one of the ways to get people to be persuaded, is just to have them consistent, whatever their prior action was. That includes writing copy like, you landed on this webpage because you like whatever, or you believe in whatever. And then they say to themselves, that's right, I do believe in whatever. And then you can lead them on to take whatever action. Liking is just, having a rapport with someone. And the easiest way to get to liking is to use social proof, which actually, I don't have social proof in here. That's interesting. But liking is basically you like people that are like yourself. And then consensus, I guess consensus is social proof. I copied this from a thing, but consensus is basically social proof. Social proof is whatever everybody else is doing. If I don't know what to do and I see whatever everybody else is doing, I'll follow that. On websites and in web copy, social proof, which I'll get into here in a minute a little more, but it's things like using specific numbers of how many customers have used your service, or how many download, and people see that other people are taking action, and it shows that you're a trusted source, or that you have social proof or social acceptance. So credibility is, ties into a lot of those principles, including like authority, social proof, and so on. And I want to go through, credibility is probably the single most powerful tool that you can use in copy. Even if your copy is weak or not very good, if you have a lot of credibility, it tends to get people to take action or to trust you. And trust and credibility are the two things that you have to acquire really quickly online. I've seen studies that talk about you got 6 seconds, or you got a fraction of a second, or whatever. You don't have very long before somebody decides whether you're trustworthy or whether you're not trustworthy online. And a lot of those factors are actually subliminal. They don't even know why they're making that decision. But I'll show you some of the reasons. So the ways to create credibility are third-party credibility, which is having somebody else say something nice about you. Those are testimonials, things like that. And I'll go through some specifics on that. Being specific. So if I say thousands of copies sold versus 5,642 copies sold, which one is more credible? If I give you a very specific number, that is more credible. So wherever you can, be as specific as you can in your copy. Also social proof, and that goes to anything that you can do that shows that other people like your customer have already done business with you. And that includes testimonials and so forth. That's also third-party credibility. And being accessible. Nobody trusts anybody that they can't reach out to and talk to. You see websites up in, phone numbers in the corners, contact forms, email addresses, physical addresses, those things, chat boxes, especially these days, having a chat box on your website. Those things will create accessibility and will create trust and credibility. So we'll go into third-party credibility here a little bit. And the reason third-party credibility is important is because people tend to trust what others say about you more than they trust what you say about you. If you go around saying, hey, you can trust me, some people might believe you. But if somebody else goes around and says that you're a trustworthy person, then you're way more likely to believe them, especially if that person has authority or if it's somebody that you're already listening to. So in testimonials, that's one of the main third-party credibility tools that we use. Be specific as you can. This goes back into specificity, which is, use full names or company names, photos, logos. Try not to use, like in this example here, the full names are great, but the pictures, the photos actually look a little more generic or a little more stock photo. I would use photos and stuff that may not, you can gray them or you can adjust them or whatever, but don't think that you have to have a professional photo whenever you're using a testimonial. The other thing is if people have spelling errors in their testimonials, or if they word things weirdly or whatever, leave those in there, because those show that it's not a curated testimonial. Somebody sent you an email and they have something in there that you're going to use on the website, and it's not spelled right or it's not worded just right, leave it in there, because that is it shows trust. And there's some other things that psychologically that works for. If you read Influence, you'll find out about that. Trust seals. So trust seals are, most people, if you ask them about trust seals, they'll say, oh, I don't care about them, or that really doesn't sway me one way or the other. But I can tell you by doing testing that trust seals increase conversion on every site that I've ever put them on. Matter of fact, I had a site where we generated leads, and we just created a little seal that said 5-star rated site. It didn't click to anything. It didn't do anything. It just had 5 stars and said 5-star rated site. And it increased our conversions by up to 11% on our lead generation forms. So if you can use things like, all of these seals that we're showing here, like the secured site, or even GoDaddy has a secured trust seal. Using credit card seals are good. If you're running ads, or if you have any articles posted in any of the news sites using those, like, as seen in Bloomberg News, or as seen on LinkedIn, or any of that kind of stuff. So the trust seals, start simple. If you have a site that you're not spending a lot of money on, or you don't have a lot of funds to advertise, use something simple like PayPal and Visa, MasterCard, that kind of thing, or 100% satisfaction guarantee seal. But if you can't afford to use actual secured site seals, those things are better. And if you belong to the Better Business Bureau, use those. All right. Next, endorsements. Any endorsement or um, any club or any of that, especially the official endorsements. I think we're going to go into implied endorsements here in a minute too. But any endorsement that you have, use those endorsements. And you can mix those in with your testimonials if you have endorsements, say from LinkedIn, and then you have also customer testimonials, or if you have endorsements from a professional organization or any of that, use those. And the more the better. A lot of people, they're like, well, we don't want to put up a bunch of stuff because we think, it's kind of like bragging or whatever. But trust me, whenever people are reading through to see if they can trust you, they'll read through a bunch of different endorsements and look at a lot of information to see if you're a company that can be trusted or a person that can be trusted. Implied endorsements, like here, you know, you have, again, ads running anywhere. You can say as seen on. If you have donated to organizations, you can put information on there. We support, and then the organizations you support, and so on. So any articles, reports, on your company, you can put links in there. I also do screen grabs of like if a client is in a magazine or something, we'll do a screen grab of the actual article or the cover if they're on the cover, etc. And so implied endorsements are great third-party credibility factors. So again, with specificity, which I mentioned earlier, at any time, use numbers, locations, names, try to be as specific as possible. If you can use full names on testimonials, do that. Also, if you have any kind of counters, like have counters of how many customers you have, or how many sales or transactions have been processed. And those, with modern websites, as people scroll down, you can have counters go in and actually, count up and show that kind of action on a web page actually works extremely well. So just be specific. And that's that. Let's see, social proof. So social proof is important because a lot of times people don't know what they're doing, or they're unsure. They're not confident in what choices they're making, and so they tend to follow other people. And again, this is the whole reason to create trust and credibility, is because people are unsure. They have a resistance. And we'll show you a formula here in a little while for actual conversion, to figure out how much conversion, or to figure out the mathematical formula for conversion. But social proof, the more social proof you can use, and again, it's like trusted people like your customer. So if you use social proof, try to make the social proof that you show on the site as close to your customer avatar as possible, or as close to your ideal customer as possible. Okay. Other ways to create social proof: testimonials, reviews. Yeah. So this is actually an example from a client that a client of mine that has a company that pulls permits. And there's a famous headline that says, "Who else wants to learn to play the piano?" And that headline can be used for just about anything, but the "who else wants," and then whatever the action is, actually shows that other people have already done it. It's a weird way to word something, However, it implies social proof automatically. Same thing with, join X number of contractors that have already received their permits. That's a very specific number that implies social proof. There's another a company called Use Proof. Look up FOMO, which is fear of missing out, and you study some of that stuff, and that goes back to scarcity. But if you can use things that are fear of missing out or FOMO in your copy, that will be super effective too. But there's a site called useproof.com that has a counter, and every time somebody interacts with the website, it pops up and it says something like, Angela just bought a copy of whatever. And it's creates a lot higher conversion rate on sites. Matter of fact, I think they say it's an average of 20-something% better conversion. Okay, so that's social proof. For copywriting, here's my basic reading recommendations. There's a lot of guys you can study out there in copywriting, and if you really want to get into copywriting and really understand good copy, go back and study some of the direct marketers from the 70s and 80s, like Clayton Makepeace or Joe Sugarman, some of those guys, or Dan Kennedy. All those guys that did direct mail marketing or did print advertisement marketing were super good copywriters. They got you really into what they were writing. On web copy, long copy is no longer really used in most places in web copy. Most websites are now using short copy and getting someone to raise their hand and then giving them more information later. But that doesn't mean long copywriting, long sales letter, or long form copywriting doesn't work. It's just it's not being used as much anymore. So Words That Sell, that book is really good. It really is just words that sell, and he talks about how to use different words, action words, and all of that. And Hypnotic Marketing is Joe Vitale, who happens to be a guy I worked for and mentored under for a long time. And it teaches you a lot about how the psychology of someone reading a sales letter or being marketing to works. And it's a really good, just basic book on sales or copywriting. And then anything by Cialdini. Influence is the first one that you should read to understand the 6 principles of influence. But he also has Persuasion, which if you're into any kind of psychology or any kind of persuasion, sales techniques or anything, that is super, super interesting book, Persuasion. So I guess if we have any questions on copywriting, we should go ahead and do those now, because I'm going to go into conversion rate optimization here. Unless, Angela, you want me to do copy or do all the questions at the end.
Yeah, let's save the questions at the end so we're sure to get through all of them. But if you, or Lisa, if you guys have those, just take note of them and we can talk about them at the end.
Okay. So conversion rate optimization, the idea of conversion rate optimization is really to enable people to take action, to take the action that you want them to take when they land on your website. And most websites are absolutely horrible at this because they want to give you all of the options. They want to give you a full menu. They want all of the buttons. They want, different paths of action available to everyone all at once. And because of that, it tends to drive down conversion rate on a website. And again, the conversion rate is just however many people visit the site versus how many people take the action action that you want them to take. And that action might be making a phone call. It might be filling out a form. It might be ordering a product. Most of the time when we talk about conversion rate, we're talking about filling out a form or filling out a lead, whether that's just email and name, or whether that's like a full lead and getting information from us, or a sale if you're doing e-commerce. So the primary thing with conversion rate optimization is make it really easy for them to take the action that you want them to take, whatever that primary action is. And so we'll go into this a little bit here. One of the companies that I learned how to do conversion optimization from was a company called Mech Labs. And I actually don't think they take any customers anymore because they have just been full for years. But one of the things that they used to do a lot was they would take a customer and they would run a set of experiments, and then they would publish their experiments. And they have they've got it down to a science. I mean, they're way better at this than I am, which is the reason that I follow them and learn as much as I can about it from them. But they've come up with this formula, and I'll go through it real quick. As best I know it. If you want to study it more, the link is here to go and read their full methodology. And then after we talk about this, we'll talk about the actual functions, or how you actually do conversion rate optimization on a site. But the conversion probability, so C equals, the conversion probability is 4 times motivator. So however motivated your user is to buy. If the user is super motivated to buy, then well, let's just say that the weight of the user being motivated is a 4 here. So the more motivated they are, the better off you are. It's the strongest factor in whether they're going to convert or not, right? Plus the 3V, which is clarity of the value proposition. And value proposition is why they're going to buy, or why they should buy from you. So a value proposition, if I offered to sell you $100 for $1, that is a value proposition. The value proposition is you get $100 for giving me $1. If the value proposition is you download a free ebook by giving me your name and email address, and you make very clear of why they should do that. Like, $100 for $1 is pretty easy. I mean, that's some simple math. But why should they download your free ebook? Is it going to solve a problem for them? Is it going to, why? What's the why? And that's the clarity of the value proposition. And then plus 2 I minus F. I is incentive to take action, which is the incentive to take action is something like scarcity, like it's only available right now. Or the incentive to take action also can be part of the motivation of the user. The incentive to take action is they need to get the document that you're offering in order to be compliant or something. So the incentive to take action is great. But that's minus whatever friction elements are in the process. And friction elements are things like, does every field on the form need to be, is it mandatory? Does it need to be filled out? So friction elements can be anything that causes friction. Do they need to format their address in a certain way? Or, whatever the different friction elements are. Sorry, I got a cat behind me that's freaking me out here. Okay. Then the A, and then that's minus 2A, which is the anxiety about entering information. If you haven't created enough trust, enough social proof, et cetera, people will have anxiety about entering their information, whether it's a name and email address, worried about spam, or whether it's a credit card, worrying about fraud, or or whatever. And again, go study that methodology if you're really interested in learning about conversion rates and how to convert on a website, because it's very interesting. You'll be able to look at a web page and you'll say, well, there's not much motivation for the user here, or the value proposition isn't clear, or there's no incentive for them to take action now, et cetera. And it'll help you quickly decide what elements are needed or what elements are missing on a page. Here's some other information about reducing friction, which is make it easy and clear to figure out. The main thing, you never want to create confusion on a web page as to what action you want someone to take. And I should have put in an example here, but where you have buttons like download now or buy now, those buttons should be big and should stand out. If that's the primary action you want a person to take on your website, those things should be really overstated, because you'll also have menu items, you'll have other links to go read different stuff, and if everything is equally weighted on the page, then you're not able to control where the person is going to follow. You're not able to lead them down the path of taking the action that you want them to. So there's a couple of different ways to create call to action buttons. Would you like to? And some of these you can go read that. There's also a guy named Perry Belcher that has, I think it's called the Big Buy button. It was kind of a joke back in the day because he had the hugest buy button on his, or the biggest buy button on his website ever, but his conversion rate was the most awesome. And he actually went out and built a whole website about why his buy button actually worked better than other people's. You can go check him out, Perry Belcher, and I think perrybelcher.com.
And for this one, I want to,
so
on the, for the Willie Welt rule, this is, if you're trying to create a button, a lot of people forget that there's an unconscious conversation happening in the reader's head. So if you can create your button, the words that are on the button that complete the sentence, either would you like to or I would like to. For instance, I would like to download now. I would like to view my cart. I would like to learn more, versus cart information on a button. So it's just thinking through what the conversation is that the user is having in their head. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And also words like submit, like nobody likes to submit, or send my information. Those kind of things don't work very well. Yeah, but you're right, Angela, that is perfect, the way to end these two sentences. Okay, on to the next thing. This is something I've told clients many times. You got to have the right rapport to tell a client this, but a lot of times people will be like, well, we need, flying monkeys on the front of the page because we really care about monkeys, and monkeys are great and they're fun. And I will tell them, well, that's just like your opinion, man. Until you test something, and I do this all the time, but I have ideas. I'm like, oh, this will work. And then I go and test it and it doesn't work at all. And it's just my opinion until it's acted and you see whether or not it actually works. And I'm a fan of the Big Lebowski. So I've said this to more than one client, that it's just your opinion until you go and test. You should try different times. Sites that a lot of people say, oh, that's an ugly website, I would never buy from that website. It doesn't matter what you think the website looks like. It matters what the website actually does. And if your client buys from the website, then your opinion doesn't really matter, unless you're more into opinions than you are into making conversions and helping your clients out. So that's just something. Let's go into the actual testing. So there's two different ways to test. Maybe there's more. I know of two primary ways to test, which is A/B testing or multivariate testing. And with A/B testing, you only want to change one thing, or you want to have two different versions of something. Sometimes, let's say you're not sure what website layout will work, and you have two different ideas. They're completely different ideas. You might A/B test those against one another, and have the same copy and the same general information on it, but test it to see which way the layout is. But more likely, A/B testing is just A/B testing one single element on a page. So it might be just the headline, or just the call to action button, or the price. A lot of times we do A/B testing with pricing, etc. Now, the main thing between A/B testing and multivariate testing is, with multivariate testing, you need a lot of traffic. You need to be able, because with multivariate testing, you're going to use a bunch of different variables on a page. So you'll have a page that has, say, 3 different headlines, 2 different prices, maybe 3 different call to action buttons, and 2 different form colors. And so what the multivariate test does is the software that you use for that creates every version, every combination that you could possibly get, and then it serves that up as visitors come to the website. With multivariate testing, you'll find combinations that you could never find with A/B testing. You'll find that there's one button, that works with a certain price and a certain headline, and it gets you the best conversion out of all the different variables that you test. But if you use that button with any other headline, it might not work, right? So A/B testing is pretty much basic. Everybody should be doing some A/B testing on everything, including your ads, your headlines, your buttons, and that's some of the things. Let's go on here to some of the things you want to test. Design and layout. The really big things are like design and layout, where a form is on a page, or where your eyes will follow. And there's some eye tracking charts out there. You should go just look at some of those and see how people read web pages. And then you'll know where to put certain elements, like forms or buttons, or credibility factors, trust factors. Headlines and subheadlines make a huge difference. They're one of the very first things that you should test. Navigation, either having navigation or not having navigation, and or having unequally weighted navigation. So if you have equally weighted, let's say you want, you have 3 different types of customer that comes to your site. But there's one specific that you want to focus on. That button needs to be bigger than the other 2. And so testing that kind of navigation, or maybe even the other, if there's 3 different customer types, and you want to focus on one, maybe having the other 2 customer type buttons hidden somewhere, or down in the bottom below the fold. And then your form, the way the form is laid out makes a lot of difference. The smaller the form, actually, the better the conversion. That's including the smaller it is in number of fields, and the smaller it is in literal size on the page. For some reason, if you have a 100-character form field, or a 20-character form field, the 20-character form field will get filled out more often than the 100-character. Even though your name is still John, you'll more often fill it out if it's a smaller form. And then your copy around your form and the basic copy on the page makes a lot of difference. Also, just as an aside with filling out or getting leads, try to use as many form fields as possible. I mean, as few form fields as possible, and use your copy to qualify your leads. So in the case where, say you need a certain qualification, say, for instance, I used to generate leads for a truck driving company and they needed certain qualifications. Well, instead of making them mandatory fill out that they had that qualification, we used copy around the form that said, if you have X and you've been employed for over a year in this industry, then fill out the form below to see if we have a job for you. Versus them having to fill out additional form fields, because what happens is people that are highly qualified a lot of times will not fill out all of your form fields, especially if they're mandatory, because they don't want to give up the information. So try to make a form as small as possible and use a copy to help convert a better lead. And then your call to action is, other than your headlines, your call to action is the most important part on your website. And that call to action could be a buy button, or it could be a download now, or other kind of button. But those are the things that I would test. I would start out super simple, with a website. Start with a very simple website, and then add things as you see fit, and test with it on there, or with it not on there, or if you need extra navigation, et cetera, test it at the top or test it at the bottom, and keep adding until you feel like you've reached highest conversion rate possible. And again, it doesn't, opinions, like, people love having a pretty site so they can show their friends or they can do whatever. None of that stuff matters if it doesn't actually convert. Unless you have money to waste. Q&A. We're here. Hope I went through that at the right pace.
Yeah, I think that's about right. We've usually had about 15 minutes left. And so thanks, Bryant, for all of that. I know that was a lot to cover, but I hope it was helpful. And so Lisa and Amra, if you guys want to either unmute and ask a question or type it into the chat, we are fine to do either one. And if you have a specific question about maybe your website, we can pull up your website live and take a look, or maybe some ad copy that you've created that you don't really feel like it's quite right. We can talk about that. All right, so Lisa asks, are there differences between different age groups and different industries?
When it comes to writing copy, or what is specifically what, in terms of how a customer reacts? Yeah. So different age groups, obviously you'll use different terminology for different age groups, and different industries. Most industries have their own nomenclature, terminology. And that's another thing that you can test. A lot of times when we run ads, we'll run ads to different age groups, and see, or run ads to all the age groups and then see who converts, and then cut down the ads that aren't working in specific age groups. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, every different niche will respond differently to different things, to different copy, and to what they're willing to, how they're willing to interact.
Yeah, I would say different industries is probably a better litmus test than age groups. So what I found is that each buyer, if you're serving them with something relatively specific, mentally, psychographically, they're all pretty similar. So they may have wild age differences. They may,
yeah, that's true,
completely different companies or countries, but they still have the same need and problem set. So the words that they would use are going to be consistent regardless of things like demographics or age. For industries, of course, it's different. You know, if I'm buying on behalf of a company or if I'm a consumer looking for a fun toy, then that's different.
Yeah. So this next question is, would you use actual customer reviews as ad copy for physical products? Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you have permission to use their reviews, I definitely would use it as ad copy. And there's, again, if you study some of the old direct marketers, they used customer reviews or written letters that customers used. They would use parts of that all through their ad copy. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And even I've had the best results is not just customer reviews, you know, the text, but if your customers have photos of them using your product, use those in
Yeah.
ads too. Those perform so much better than any photo you could ever take. It's because it looks like somebody else, right? It's that social proof element.
Yeah.
There's a follow-on question. Is permission necessary if the review is public? I still would ask them. I always err on the side of asking them just to make sure. And if they're already happy with you, then they should be okay. I don't know. What do you think, Bryant?
Yeah. I mean, um,
You may fall on the
it's according to what exactly. So if the review's public, like if it's on Amazon or something, Amazon has terms against using that review on your website. If the review's public, like in Google, I do it. You know, I go and do screen captures of public play, like even in LinkedIn and stuff. Whenever I'm working on projects, I'll grab LinkedIn screen captures of somebody's recommendation of someone and pop it in. I mean, it's kind of, as far as whether it's legal or moral, I don't, you know, I don't know there, but it works. If you can get the permission, I would get permission, but you know, I won't tell you what to do legally or morally, but I can tell you it works.
I would say, you know, we're waiting for any other questions. I would say the most important piece with all of this is test and measure. You know, like Bryant said, that's just your
Exactly.
opinion. That's the beautiful, amazing part about digital marketing is you can actually test and see the results versus if you put up a billboard, you can't really measure how many people saw it, how much it influenced them to buy your product. Digital marketing gives you that information in real time.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa. So specifically with the customers that are attracted to my type of company that sells art and artistic goods, they don't really like a lot of copy, but I'm also a little bit part of the fashion industry, which is big on conversion. How do I balance two so I don't sound business and corporate, but also at the same time be effective? Um, so with a lot, I'm trying to think of the magazine that there used to be a magazine that they gave out on airplanes that the way that the copy was written, like it would be a hat, you know, it'd be like a $10 hat, but the copy was written in such a way that was fun and intriguing. It would be like this, you know, natural leather hat from Argentina, from the high mountains of Argentina, has come to party with you in New York City or whatever. And it would be like you would want that hat so bad, and it's a $10 hat, but they got it for $120 in the magazine. um, that is the way I've always seen selling things like art and artistic goods and so on, is using copy that's fun and that gets you into a story. It's almost like role playing with the client to get them into the story of, you know, having your product, whether it's, clothing or whether it's a piece of art, something like that. But yeah, you have to use words in order, well, in most cases, you have to use words in order to convert. Even though pictures are nice, a picture will not get someone to click a button. It also won't work as far as Google, as far as SEO or ad copy or any of that. Just having a picture will not work. But I think that having fun copy works best in that case, if that answers the question.
And I would say, adding on to that, Lisa, I'm a little familiar with your business, that if you have a really strong brand, if your brand is really fun and playful, or whatever the elements are that you want to put out there, don't shy away from being strong in that. I think there are so many competitors, so many people out there, so much noise, so much cool stuff to buy and look at, that the stronger you can be, and emphasize the unique aspects of your product and your brand, I think you're going to be that much more effective. People want to believe in something, and they need to distill it down to just a few different words, like, again, fun, unique, creative, whatever it is. And so the stronger you can be in your copy, I wouldn't really shy away too much from that. Even if you think you have to sound businessy, as long as it matches what your customer wants, use the words your customers would use, make it sound like them. Again, it goes back to that likability piece. So I wouldn't worry too much about trying to sound corporate if your customers aren't corporate.
Another piece of advice that I like to give is enter the conversation that's already in your customer's head. Everybody has a conversation rolling around in their head at different times on different subjects. And if you have a product and you know your customer extremely well, you know what the conversation going on in their head is about that. And so that's the main thing, is like, think about what they're saying to themselves about your product or about the thing that your product solves, the insecurity, the need, the desire that your product solves. And again, like, if you can enter that, it's almost like role playing with the customer.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have just a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else have a question or website or piece of copy that they would want us to look at? How much are our services? We can chat offline. Depends on what you need done. Bryant and I both work with small businesses because we love small business. We've had lots of experience in the corporate world, and it's not really our favorite thing to do. So we love helping small business, and we have our pricing in accordance with that. So Amber, I'll send you an email, and we can connect and chat and see kind of what you may need done in terms of packages. So Lisa asks, any writing on a website is considered copy? Yes, that's the industry term for just words on a website is copy. So that's why you hear copywriter. That's somebody whose job is to create text that, yes, please do send your website, Lisa, to create text that communicates something. Usually it's to get a sale, whereas a content writer creates content that may not make the user want to buy, but it communicates something. All right, Bryant, do you want to pull up Lisa's website and then share your screen?
Already there.
Yes, awesome.
It's like, all right. So, any specific questions, Lisa, on this? Or you just want me to give you a general overview? So the first thing is I wouldn't have this person's head cut off. um, Mainly because eyes, I would have them looking at the pen or looking down at the button down here. Um, Eyes are very important, and when somebody's has their eyes hidden, like we can tell, I know you're trying to focus on the pens, but when their eyes are hidden, it doesn't feel trustworthy. Does that make sense? And you can use eyes to point. That's another thing on web copy and just conversion in general. Wherever eyes are looking, people will follow. And wherever buttons are pointing, people will follow, or arrows are pointing. So pins, apparel. I would have some copy up here too, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Lisa, is this in Shopify? Okay. So one thing I would do is add some description, like a short description text. And like I saw on that other one, let me go through some of these and see. Yeah. So I like these descriptions right here. I would add those in the short description text on the front, so you have some more copy on the front of the page instead of just the pins. What do you sell most of on? Do you sell or accessories? What converts the best for you? Canadian artisan. Sell the pins the most. Okay. Um, and stickers. Okay. Do you have packages like where someone can buy multiple pens at a time, or stickers and pens, or things like that? I would think about that kind of offer. Just like, hey, get a package. What do you think, Angela? What?
Yeah, I think I like the package idea. I know you say the shipping is $70, but if I'm there trying to get a $15 pin, I would be more likely to hit that free shipping threshold if I could get a package of pins. So I would include packages. And if, they came there to get your pins, they may in fact be interested in a t-shirt. So you can even say, hey, get a quote unquote discount t-shirt. And then include that, buy 3 pins, get a t-shirt for $5 instead of 15. It's another
Yeah.
way to get your brand out there and upsell. Unfortunately, I have to hop on, be kicked out of my conference room. But Lisa, you have my email address. Feel free to send me an email. Bryant and I are happy to chat through a little bit with you. I know you're in a kind of decision stage with the Kickstarter you just launched. We can connect then. But I really want to thank you guys for coming and participating. And Bryant, thanks for being my special guest. I think it was awesome. So I appreciate it, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
All right,
Talk to you
and
soon.
I'll send you an email too.
All right. Bye.
All right, thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.